Apple Vision version 2 coming sooner than we think to take on the competition.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk all things tech throughout the week. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But first, today we're going to be talking about the Apple Vision Air, which is supposed to come in as low as $1,500.
Wow, pretty big price decrease on this. Essentially, the rumor is that Apple is rushing the development of a cheaper version of the Apple Vision Pro. Something we have talked about many times on this podcast, and I think a lot of times in the comments, people are like, what? That's crazy. Why would they do that? One comment is especially, I'll call out this commenter a little bit. They were like, what? Apple's never done that with the iPhone or the iPad or the Mac or whatever. And I'm like, they literally have done that with every single product they have ever made. Like, what are you talking about? Yes, like Apple has always released cheaper versions of products and not necessarily a cost reduction on that particular product, but released a version that is cheaper to make that they can sell for cheaper, right?
Yeah.
You got the Pro Air model is across the Macs. You've got regular 15 versus the Pro 15s and iPhones. Like, it's across the board. So I don't think this is a surprise. I think the surprise here is the swiftness they seem to be wanting to do this at. And particularly maybe because they are feeling a little pressure from things like Meta and what they're doing, all these other AR kind of companies out there. As the Apple Vision Pro expert on the podcast, what are things right now that you think they can kind of cut out of this to get that cost down?
Well, the first one that I agree with is apparently the screens actually on the device itself cost $456 for them, like on their manufacturing cost, and that's the biggest cost for the whole thing. So they're apparently working with a couple different manufacturers, because right now it's only Sony is their only supplier. So they're apparently working with both BOE and SIA, and of course it's going to have to meet Apple's quality standard there, but that could create some competition, which could help them bring down the cost of those displays. I don't think those displays could really change to keep up the Apple quality, but the front display, I think, can go.
And that's something we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Almost worthless, right? Like I can't see a real use case for this. And I know Apple's vision for this was that, you can interact with people better if you see their eyes or whatever it is. But it just comes off as weird. Like, it doesn't really look right. It almost looks like you're wearing just like those eye masks you wear that have eyes on top of them, you know? Like, it's like kind of cartoony almost. So yeah, that seems like a place they could cut cost immediately right there.
And I think it's probably just wasting battery too. It's a waste of the resources. It costs extra money just to put that extra display there. And yeah, like you're saying, most people go like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see the eyes. Oh, that's kind of weird. No one at all is going like, oh, wow, yeah, feels like I'm connecting with you, which is how they sold it.
Yeah.
So I think they can get rid of that like immediately until at least they get that to a place where it's really good.
And also the weight, right? Like, there's one less screen on it, right? Get the weight down. Speaking of weight, materials. I had said in a previous episode that, they should just make the thing out of plastic. And people are like, no, like Apple would never do that. And I'm like, well, no, they wouldn't call it plastic. They call it polycarbonate. And Apple has made many products out of plastic, and they just call it polycarbonate. That's what it is. That seems like a material changes, things like that, another way to get the weight down and that cost down, right?
Yeah.
What do you think, what's the target price you think this thing needs to be at to really sell a lot of units?
Well, they're aiming for $1,500. I honestly think that could be a sweet spot. Maybe getting down to $1,000 is going to be necessary, because they're competing with the Meta Quest 3, which is $500. So right now it's like you can get 7 of those for the price. If you can get 2 or 3 and you see these major upgrades, then that's going to make more sense to people. It's like, I'm saving up for the good headset, the Apple Vision headset, not like I'm completely in a different ball game for buying this Pro one. I don't know. I think 1,000 might be, but they're going to aim for 1,500 reportedly.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's kind of like that psychological barrier when something's like $199.9, you know, like like versus if something is like $2,200. You're like, whoa, that's too much money, right? If there's a 1 in front of it, somehow it seems like it's more affordable.
They can get it $999 at the event.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. They'd sell a ton of these things, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, Apple's not going to lose money on this, right? So I think the total parts cost right now is about $1,500 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have, they got to repay for all their R&D and shipping and the guy at the store that sells it to you, right? So no doubt they're making a profit on this, but how much room in the margin really is there? Like it almost seems like it needs to be at that $1,500 range, even if they significantly reduce cost.
Yeah. And I think if they keep the screens like it is and make, even if the whole thing is plastic, even if it doesn't even feel that amazing, even if for some reason it's bigger but it's lighter, I think people will forgive it because the screens are so good on the Apple Vision.
That's really the wow factor of this thing, is
Yeah.
when you put it on and that pass-through kicks in and you go, I don't feel like I'm looking at a screen, right? Like, it takes you a second to even notice, oh, wait, maybe there's a little noise in the darkness or something. You know, like you can kind of see stuff that tells the screen. That's, I think, is the magic of it, is the pass-through and then just the, you know, all the AR of it all, being able to, like, you know, pin things and do all this kind of stuff. Neither of those things have anything to do with the materials that it is made out of or that front-facing screen, right?
Yeah, I was actually talking with Andrew, the other co-host who's here sometimes, about we both saw Dune 2, loved it. I saw it in 70 millimeter IMAX and I saw it regular IMAX. I also saw it in under normal theater. I'm sorry. But I also watched the original Dune on the Apple Vision in 3D. It's really interesting because in a theater, even with all those amazing projection technologies, it's still projection. So you're still seeing sometimes the screen when it gets, you know, there's a lot of white in the scene. You can kind of see the wrinkles in the screen or like little folds, or the projection is just a little more dim or certain things. It's almost like the Apple Vision is actually one of the best ways to watch a movie like that. And so it was weird to experience Dune 1 like that and then go see the second one. Incredible experience, obviously. And you can't replicate sound like you can in a theater. But yeah, it's on that level that it's like, oh, I can watch it on the Apple Vision. And it feels like I'm in the theater. I've even been doing a test because I'll make the window basically as big as I can in the Apple Vision, and then I close one eye to see if I'm like cutting off part of it, you know? And I did that in the theater, and I'm like, it's about the same, like same size.
The relative size to your view is the same as you get in a theater. And yeah, and that display is spectacular, like you're saying, something Apple has been known for a long time, right? These high quality displays. Yeah, like I feel like that's the real magic of this thing, is the display. The problem is you got to use it to see that. And it's even more difficult than other Apple products, right? Like it's, you know, if you go to the Apple store and you see a Apple XDR display or a MacBook or whatever it is, right? You can instantly go, oh, wow, that's crazy, right? I remember when the Retina displays first came out, people would go to the Apple store just to look at those and be like, oh my God, the text is so crisp, whatever, you know. That's really difficult to do with the Apple Vision, right? It's such like a unique insular thing you got to do. It's got to be fitted for you, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because you have eye tracking. It has to go through this whole setup process.
Yeah, so it's not like at that range where you can really go in the Apple store and go, oh, wow, this is crazy. Have you seen this? Hey, come look at this thing, right? And you bring your buddy over or whatever. So I think that's the thing Apple's going to have to kind of overcome, is to just convince people, trust me, this thing looks amazing. come buy it. Come try it out, right?
Definitely. And yeah, so going back to things that could go for a cheaper version of this headset, I imagine the speaker quality could be reduced a little bit. It's really good on there, and I use it a lot without putting extra headphones in. But I assume a lot of customers are going to be putting headphones in, like AirPods or something, so they could probably reduce the quality of the internal ones, especially if they have data showing a ton of people are just using AirPods anyway. And then just little things like it came with 2 of whatever the iCup thing is called, and then it came with 2 different straps, the solo loop and the double. So little things like that will help them reduce cost. But yeah, it seems the main thing I'm going to guess is going to be the screens, if they can get competition there, because I don't think they can really reduce the quality there, and then make this thing out of plastic, but show you that it doesn't matter because you look at it and it still looks incredible.
Yeah. Again, polycarbonate, not plastic.
Sorry.
A totally different,
bad.
wildly different thing. The other thing we haven't hit on, that external battery, right? Like, and I don't know if that's something within the next generation or 2 of this you can really get rid of that much, right? Like Apple already known for advanced battery technology, all this kind of stuff, right? Like if this is the best they can do right now, like how much better can it get in a generation or 2? Are we going to be stuck with that external battery?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't mind it too much most of the time, but every once in a while, either you're giving it to someone and they forget, and then it's just knocked onto the ground or something, or you forget, or you have this cable here, so you do have to, like, you're going around a corner and there's like a knob that you're like, oh, I better not get caught on this knob. So there's certain things like that that make the external battery annoying, but the battery life is pretty good. I haven't really been bothered by it. And usually you're using this kind of in a static situation. There aren't a ton of games where you're like really moving around yet. Yeah, I'm curious to see that. I think they'll probably have to keep it because if they're going to want to keep it how it is, it needs that. But yeah.
Yeah. I guess we're kind of just stuck with that cord for now anyway.
For now, yeah, because I'm assuming it's the displays that take up the majority of that power.
Right, yeah.
So,
well, maybe they'd get rid of that stupid front display, right? Maybe they could make the battery smaller, lighter, integrate into the band or something like that. You know, like you'd almost have it on the back end of the band, so it kind of counterweights it or something like that. I'm sure they experimented with this, and we're like, nah, this isn't the way to go. Like, you know, we're just speculating. I'm sure they spent billions of dollars on R&D, and they're like, oh, trust us, guys. Like, this is the better way to use this. The only way that this technology gets wider adoption is if they make it cheaper, right? So they've got to do that. It's coming. It's definitely coming. The question is just how fast, you know? So what's your prediction on that? When are we going to see an Apple Vision Air?
I still feel like it'll be at least 18 months, which has been the rumor. I think that timeline would make sense. They still have to get more apps onto this thing before people would buy it at even the $1,000 or $1,500 price tag. I think they need to prove out what all this can be beyond just the initial dinosaur demo and stuff like that. Because it's still, I show people, and a lot of people are blown away by how intuitive it is and how good it looks. But then it's kind of like, okay, yeah, now what? Like, oh, I guess I could pull out a computer and use a display, which is cool and works really well. But yeah, there needs to be more use cases where you can go, oh, try this.
They need that killer app, right?
Yeah.
Which maybe we talked about this in another video. Maybe it's that face swap thing where you can make people's faces be different, change how your wife or husband looks or something like that. That might be the secret selling point of this thing.
Yeah. To go back to other things that could be eliminated as well. Apparently, Mark Gurman is saying that they could have fewer cameras on it, which I'm not sure what all that would achieve or if they could still achieve the same level of pass-through with that, but maybe they could. And then lower resolution screens, he mentions. I hope they don't do that too bad. And then iPhone grade chip instead of an M series Mac chip, which that one does make sense to me. Maybe it can only run a certain level of apps.
That's an interesting point, right? Because right now, why does it need that M series chip, right? What is it actually doing that requires that much computing power? Maybe it's, and I don't know the underlying technology. Maybe it needs that much power to figure out the spatial stuff or whatever. But if you look at the, I guess, caliber of apps that are on it, very iPhone-esque apps,
yeah,
I would say.
If it's not built for Vision, you can only download iPhone or iPad apps. You can't download Mac apps.
Yeah, it's not running Final Cut or Logic or something like that natively on the thing. So why is that M1 chip there? And maybe it's just Apple looking forward to the idea of apps that could be on it or their vision for it. That seems like an easy cost-cutting method right there.
And yeah, it's just like the iPad. You have the M chips in the Pro version, and then you have in the normal iPad, you have just a normal A chip from Apple. They could absolutely do the same thing here.
For sure. What are some apps you can think of that you want on this thing as it improves, as it grows?
On the requiring the M chip side of things, Apple just released a press release thing on their newsroom talking about healthcare solutions with the Apple Vision Pro. And it's really interesting to consider because they have an example of planning surgeries, helping professionals train, engaging in patient care. But there's two very specific apps. One is called My Mako, and it uses 3D capabilities to enhance surgical planning. And there's another one called Kirano Health that is immersive training on equipment. And that's something I didn't ever actually consider. But, you know, you can learn from videos and from manuals and stuff. But then once you're actually at the machine in like a situation where you need to do it right, that's a big transition. But here you could actually be in the Vision in 3D space, feeling like the real world and seeing the machine in its actual size. And then you're fully getting trained on that. And then it's just like you take off the headset and it's real. Those are some solutions that probably would require the M chip in the Pro thing. And it's absolutely a Pro use because it's in healthcare.
And this seems like one of the cooler applications of this AR tech. You know, people who are doing intense, very, you know, concentrated, focused jobs like surgery, and being able to get extra information, being able to enhance what you're seeing as you're in the middle of this literal life and death situation. This seems great. And no doubt, like, this is one of the past ARs going down is in the real professional environment. And I mean, super high-end professional environment, surgeries, pilots, things like this, where you're required to see the world around you, but also need to get a bunch of information at the same time. AR is perfect for it. So this is a really cool use.
Definitely. And so, yeah, we'll see. Maybe Apple will make an Apple Vision Air with a lower chip and a lower price point. And will it be able to run these apps? How will they do that? Hopefully it's coming soon.
So the Air for the rest of us who just want to watch Dune, and the Pro for surgeons and people doing important things with their lives and not just hanging out making podcasts and watching Dune.
Exactly.